Hello, everyone. Finally, welcome back to Crossroads of Cognizance. It has been a time and a half. I think it's been about a month since our
I think
last
it has been a
broadcast.
month. Yeah.
That's wild. We have missed
'Cause
you
you had
guys.
stuff going on. I had stuff going on.
Yep,
And it
life was
just,
lifing.
we could not have put our best foot forward on this at all. We were just consumed by life all of a sudden.
Absolutely, absolutely. But glad to be back. And we're kicking things off with, I think, something we've covered before, but we're covering it from a different angle, which is healing and protection. Both are important topics. There's some overlap. There's using it for when to use one or the other, which would benefit you more, and so on and so forth. But before we get too deep into the nitty gritty, there's those standard show things that we have to cover. So if you are new, and that means you haven't seen us over the last month, what you're going to want to do is like and subscribe on Facebook. Also, click on the video because you will be able to comment and chat with us. And then if you're on YouTube, just do, and we'll hear from you as long as you're typing in the comment box. Although, I'm close to a Mercury retrograde. Sometimes electronics are funny, but we will do the best that we can. And then, going from there, just kick back, enjoy the show, give us your insights. We'd love to hear from you. And if this is not your first time, you knew all of that spiel. But we
But
have
nobody's ever here at the beginning anyway. So,
like one faithful subscriber that like
yes.
joins in and it's like, yes,
Like,
I will
where's
hear
Heidi?
your
Where's
insights.
Heidi? Where's it Heidi here?
um, Now, again, if you are new to us, we have introductions. So for me, I am Dahlia Rose. I'm the founder of the Conduit School, and I serve my community as a healer, a teacher, and a conduit for high vibrational energies. I do this by guiding my students with spiritual development, energy work, meditation, crystals, services, counseling. I mean, you name it, and I'm probably going to try and do it spiritually. But I do all this to pull together ancient healing practices, create transformation in the lives of those who work with me, and this is where my heart is, because I believe that we need to expand the way that we look at healing, reconnect with our bodies, and feel more empowered to be ourselves more so than we ever thought possible. But I am not doing this alone here on the show.
So Dahlia, as usual, is being super modest. Now, here's how I think of Dahlia. I've got to tell you, there was a time when we first started having phones that did a whole lot more than just make phone calls, where the catchphrase was, "There's an app for that," and if it's something spiritual that you need done. In my head, I always think Dahlia can do that in the same time because she's going to have some way to work that in. What I love about today's topic is that it's something she and I both do. There are lots of things that, oh, this is more Dahlia's thing that we're talking about, or this is more my thing that we're talking about, or hell, let's bring Eric in because it's not either one of our things. Speaking of which, we got to do the alien show. But on this one, it's both of us. We both do this. Now, my name's Katrina Rasbold. I'm a professional witch. And when I say professional witch, y'all can tee-hee. It's kind of funny. But what I do is I do spell work and cleansing for people as a practitioner. I also do readings for people as well and offer all sorts of items through my Patreon. And that's the primary place that people contact me now. And also through my Facebook page and crossroadsoccult.com. My husband and I own Crossroads Occult, and we make and sell our own magical items. So this has been a part of my life for probably, around 40 years, I would say. And during that time, I've worked with a lot of different modalities. And what I see in common is we have probably 4 topics that come up more than anything.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm talking about when somebody approaches me, they're going to be opening their mouth about something that's in this list of 4 usually. And if it's not, it impresses me. And that would be money or their job, their career, what's happening with that, what's going to be happening with that, when am I going to get some money? Love is another really big one, love and relationships.
Super
And
big.
the other two are protection and healing.
Yep.
And those two things have a really interesting relationship with one another. And that's the little crux that we're going to be talking about today. And I just love this topic. And I have to differentiate those things to people pretty often, because people will come to me for a healing and say, okay, so I'm protected now, right? No,
No.
that's a whole other ball game. And the way that I kind of lay it out is, look, I am like the surgeon. So if you come to me for a healing or some type of energy work, I'm like a surgeon that just got a body on the table that's been stabbed or shot or something. My job is to repair that. My job is to fix that and get that client whole and healthy again. That doesn't mean they're not going to walk out and get shot again. It just means that my part of the job is to do that. Now, my part of the job is also protection. So that's just a different conversation that we're having. And protection work is really personal and very specific. There's some that some people are comfortable with, some that they're not. Whereas with healing, they're usually pretty open to, hey, just do what you need to do, but get this fucking thing out of me. So
I said that when I was giving birth.
I know. I actually grabbed my midwife by the lapels and said those words. And it was the easiest labor. And it was little Dylan, who's the sweetest baby ever. But I was like, get this thing out of me. Spittle in her face. So, she tells that story a lot. That's kind of, that's the conversation people are having when something's going on energetically that's interfering with their progress. And so again, protecting you from that happening again is really different than healing you from that situation. But there are places where it all just kind of overlaps. And that's kind of the conversation for today.
100%. And I don't know if you find this with, I'm sure you do, but after going through a healing session with a person, I often have to have this conversation of like, hey, you are spiritually raw right now. Do not go back out and just try to lift that bus that you feel like you can lift now because we've taken all the weight off of you. And I have a handful of people. There's Heidi. Hi, Heidi. I have
Heidi,
people. I've had people across the years that I've been doing this, which is, I mean, professionally since 2015, where they have really heeded my warning. And I had to create a whole like care sheet for after healing sessions because it just, people were in a different headspace afterward, and giving them instructions on how to care for themselves was not going to work verbally. But from there, having to basically explain like people less and, do not, if you find yourself in arguments or you find that people are treating you differently, this is a great place for observation rather than activity, and so on and so forth, at least for a little period of time, because you have to integrate those changes. And if you go out feeling like you've let go of so much and now you can handle more, that doesn't really give your energy field and your body space to grow into where it is expanded. It's kind of like you were saying with surgery, the body can't hold empty space. So when the surgeon removes maybe say like a tumor or, a pocket of something, the body needs time to fill that cavity or to, have the skin shrink back in. But if you are, messing around with it, what's going to get filled in there is infection. If you get off a healing table or get off the phone with your healer and you go back out into the public and you're just like, I'm going to tell everybody a piece of my mind, then you are going to get it back tenfold, and it may be a little heavier than you're used to. I mean, and even I have made this mistake. And it's probably like where some of this wisdom comes from. I recall going through a healing experience and him having to tell me, don't engage with other people very closely for like 4 weeks. And I was like, I can handle it. The day after, I was depressed. I was in my bed. The only thing that could get me out of bed was emotional freedom technique, EFT, which
Every time.
never works for me other than that.
Really?
Yeah. And I
You
was
know,
like,
it
this must be
always
bad.
works for me, but I keep
Yeah.
forgetting that I know how to do it. And I've taught classes on this,
Yeah.
and I still forget that it's a resource that's in my toolbox. I have
Yep.
the best of luck with tapping.
It's
I
a
can
great
drop my
modality.
blood pressure. I can drop my blood pressure by 10, 15 points
Yeah.
in 15 minutes by tapping.
Nice. I mean, it's a great modality. That was the one most significant time. Any other time I've tried it, it really hasn't worked. But, I just wanted to throw that in there about, sort of the healing piece is that um, just in contrast to protection, when I think you can come out of both scenarios, healing and protection, feeling good, feeling somewhat solid. Sometimes that's not the case. I mean, there are definitely moments where you go through healing session and maybe it's something that you have to let go and grieve and you aren't feeling the most positive, but you can feel a sense of balance after both healing and protection, and only one of those is going to actually give you some buffer between you and the outside world, and that's protection.
I can absolutely concur with that. And what it puts to mind for me is that when you're going through Reiki training, if you have a really good quality instructor, one of the things they're going to tell you is that when you complete successfully Reiki 1, and it really takes, you will likely have a physical crisis afterwards.
Yep.
And that is just part and parcel of what happens. That energy takes hold of you, and you're going to get a cold, or you're going to break a leg, or you're going to
Diarrhea.
something. You have
Yep.
a physical response to the integration of that energy. And I think that it is so you stop moving, so that you get completely still and rest, because people try to get up and pretend like nothing phenomenal just happened this weekend. When Reiki changes who you are and how you perceive the world, you need time to process that. On the other levels, Reiki 2, Reiki 3, you may have an emotional crisis. You might have a mental crisis, and you might have a spiritual crisis. Those are all normal. And what we look at when we're having that sort of crisis is, what do I need to evaluate? What am I overdoing on? If you're having a spiritual crisis, then you have put too much spirituality on your plate, so to speak, and you need to pare it back some. You need to see what's real for you and what's not. I see this a lot. I think most serious people who are really devoted and involved with their spirituality at some point will have a spiritual crisis where they have this crisis of faith, where they're just like, this is all bullshit. This isn't. And basically what that means is, I didn't get what I wanted, or I'm not seeing evidence that what I'm doing is doing anything. And when that happens, that's that time that you sit down and say, okay, so what does feel real for me? And that's often the time you need a spiritual overhaul. You need to refocus, because spirituality is not static. We don't go through our lives with the same spirituality we had that we were taught as a child, without it developing within us. A mental crisis is just maybe you're taking on too much. Your mind is just overloaded, and it needs to break down in order to be still. And that emotional crisis is just that overwhelming onslaught of feeling. And this happens a lot with empaths. And I tell you all of those things because a lot of people, when they come to us for healings, will have a physical, an emotional, a mental, or a spiritual crisis right after.
Yep.
I have a lot of spiritual crises that happen with people after I do a healing on someone who is devoutly Christian, because they have a little bit of shame in coming to me
That
and
makes sense.
discomfort with that. And so when I make it better and their praying didn't make it better, they think it means there's something wrong with their relationship with the divine, which isn't true.
Interesting.
Just needed somebody else to help, channel the energy. And so they'll have a spiritual crisis where they feel bad because they went to somebody who was not within the church for help, or they feel bad that their religion was not able to do for them what I could do. And so it creates that weirdness there. So sometimes it's an emotional crisis, because if we remove something that is causing emotional distress, as you said, it creates a vacuum. And your emotions don't know what to do if they're not feeling afraid. They don't know what to do if they're not feeling hurt or abandoned. If you work on that and you heal it, all of a sudden you don't know what to feel, because those feelings were so prevalent that it kind of tamped down all the other feelings. And if you have the mental crisis, then you can't sleep at night because your brain is just going and going and going and going and going. We do the healing and your thoughts start to slow and be a little bit more calm, and that feels abnormal to you. So you start piling more stuff on to think about. So we do this to ourselves, like you said, by overloading and doing too much after we have that healing. We need that time to process. And again, you wouldn't get up off that operating table, hopefully, or the delivery room table and go back to work. You need a little time to heal and recover and find out who you are in absence of this. And after you have healed, what comes next? And I'm also thinking about, my people that I talk about with love, who just love to go out in the astral and just pick up all kinds of stuff and cleaned up of their little astral STDs that they picked up by doing all this stuff out in the ether. And boy, they feel so good. They just can't wait to get back out there again. It's like, Lord.
Well, I was speaking with a friend who does healing work, and they were talking about experiencing people who, I guess, do exactly what you just described. So there's this, like, I love the feeling of whatever takes place, even though it's a negative occurrence, and then loving the feeling and the process of being healed.
Mm-hmm.
And sort of being in that cycle and rhythm of what is known, rather than who would they be or who am I without these things going on.
Mm-hmm.
It's very interesting, because it happens both emotionally and spiritually, in terms of like what's being brought on, what patterns are you used to, where does your mental state fall. And you and I had this beautiful conversation yesterday about mentality alongside healing and protection. And I don't know if we'll be able to bring it back fully, because it was such a great conversation. But when you spoke about protection and poverty, do you remember?
Oh, I do. So basically, what came to me as we were talking, which y'all, that's what happens is I start talking to Dahlia and all these little light bulbs start going off and we just get down
Same.
so many rabbit holes. But what happens, I believe, and this was something that really stuck with me yesterday. That's why I remembered this, because I did a lot of thinking about it, talked to Eric about it after we were done. When we are trying to protect ourselves from something, we often, and often we're trying to protect ourselves from something we're trying to heal from, away from, or heal ourselves out of.
Mm.
And in some ways, it's like we're pitching and catching at the same time, because we want to protect ourselves from it, but we also want to heal it.
Yes.
And those are two really different processes that are related, but it's hard to do both at once. And I think I was trying to think of why the reason for that might be, and I didn't have a good answer. But then it came to me that when we are attempting to heal ourselves from something, we are trying to, I got to make sure I get it the way that I said it before. We're not healing that thing. We're healing our relationship with the lack of that thing.
Yes.
So if we are trying to um, draw in love, for instance, we're trying to heal our relationship with love, with people. We're not focused on that. We're focused on our loneliness. We're focused on our lack of love. That's what's driving us, is the fact that I really need to fix this relationship with my mom because I miss her and I feel the lack of her presence and the lack of her love. So our relationship was with lack, not with mom or the love. If we're healing our relationship with money and finances and abundance, what we're really thinking about when we're working on that is how poor we are. We're thinking about poverty. And so our relationship is with poverty. It's not with money. We don't have a relationship with money, so we don't have any money.
Mm-hmm.
And so we can't really create a relationship with what isn't there and what we don't have. That's like saying, "Oh, I'm in love with Leonardo DiCaprio." Well, you ain't got Leonardo DiCaprio and he don't know you're alive.
Right.
So, no, you don't have a relationship. You've got something pretend in your head. And often it's the same thing with money. It's the same thing with love. It's the same thing with familial relationships. It's the same thing with good health, is that we're focused on what we don't have. And so we have a relationship with what we don't have. And it's really hard to change the tide of that, because the only way you change the tide of that is to focus on what you have or what you want. And you can't really do that if you don't have it, or if you don't know what it feels like to have it. So that's I think what I was going for yesterday a little bit. I think I explained it better yesterday, but yeah, it's just I can speak to this because I lived most of my life in poverty. And I mean, from the second I was squoze out of my mother's hoo-ha until just a couple, 3 years ago, I lived in poverty, and I mean real poverty. And I always wanted abundance. I always wanted wealth. I did all of this work every year to try to build abundance and financial security. And I talked a good game, and I was really in it, but nothing seemed to shift. And once it finally did shift and I began to have money, then I could form a relationship with it. And that created more abundance. And when people talk about that being a thing, that's real. When you stop focusing on how you're going to pay your bills, and I'm not saying that you can do that when you're in poverty. That's
Right.
the
Yeah,
trick.
that's the
And
point.
that's the paradox.
Yeah.
Is Steve Martin had this routine he did that was really funny, where he said, "Okay, so here's how you can be a millionaire and not pay taxes." And he said, "First, get $1 million." and, and then he goes off on this whole thing about forgetting to pay your taxes. But that's all it is. If you want to heal your relationship with money, just get some money. And it's weird because people always tell you stuff like, "Oh, money won't make you happy and money doesn't fix everything." You know what? It kind of does, actually.
It does. And there's been so many things where sayings like that are coming to the forefront in like in these younger generations, where they're like, that just isn't true. And there's a reason that those sayings were put forward. It was to keep you in a particular mindset so that you didn't strive for more. All these systems that have been built up to maintain poverty, to maintain social economic status, to even down to race. Like, all of these things have been here to keep us in a box, and only now, when the greatest danger, I guess, not that it's small, but the greatest dangers are now our health rather than the possibility of financial abundance or going out into the world and doing what you were called to do. You have greater opportunity for those things, and now we're just working through the health stuff. Now we can finally look back and say, wait a minute, somebody said that wrong, and they did it on purpose, which is to say, yes, money probably will fix a lot and give you the freedom to be yourself because you're not worried about what's going on in the background. I
That's
think this falls right in line with the whole healing and protection thing as you're going along your spiritual journey. Because this is how we got onto the topic. as you're going along on your spiritual journey, you are focused on a sense of lack. What don't I have? I am not this. I am not that. I am not balanced. I'm broken. That it's just lack, 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 lack. And then you get to a place, hopefully, sooner rather than later, where you start to realize what you do have. You know, those journeys into your past life selves start to become more familiar rather than something that you no longer have in this life. You begin to, when you've heard for the 85th time that you're a healer and you're here to change the world, you go, okay, I got it. And so you are no longer in this place of trying to protect your energy field so actively, but it's more about acceptance. It's more about I likely have the tools to deal with this, and just have to, like you said, remember that I have them. And then protection comes with that. You're not invincible at that point, but you are no longer in that relationship with lack. And that's the difference between healing and protection on some levels, I think.
Oh, I completely agree. And two thoughts on that really jumped out at me while you were talking. Another reason, yes, there is heavy manipulation into getting a large portion of the population to believe that they are going to lose something if they become affluent or have abundance, that
Right.
they are going to become unkind, or they are going to not have family time, or whatever that might look like for them. But also there is a misperceived compassion that happens too. For instance, when I was growing up where I'm from, your options were limited. Now, I grew up in the 60s, and in Kentucky where I lived, you could go into the coal mines, you could go into the military, or you could go to college. Now, those things were options if you were male. If you were female, you had an option to get married and have your abundance or your opportunity for abundance come through the coal mines or the military or college through your husband.
Mm-hmm.
Or you could be an old maid and rely on your family. I mean, that's what was available. And so none of those things scream abundance. None of those things are going to make you wealthy. And so a lot of times they would tell us those things because they thought that it would be harmful for us to want more, because those options were not available. And so it's weird and it's insidious and it's bizarre that does happen. Yes, I completely agree with all of those things that you said. Um, the other thing that I would say regarding the relationship with lack that happens is, one of the big questions that's come up is, if I knew how to get money, I would be happy not to have a relationship with lack. But because I don't have money, I'm still going to hold my breath every time I slide my debit card at the store. Or if I knew how to get somebody as a partner, I would do that. So the question becomes, how do you shift that if you are stuck in a relationship with lack and you need to heal that? Now, this isn't going too far into the protection, but we can get to that in a little bit in the last half of the hour. But what I would say is, my shift in abundance, coming from poverty my whole life, came when I surrendered to the demands of the universe. And you were talking about those past life things where you are called strongly to do something. And I kept getting called to open a store. And I had 4 different occasions that I was this close. I mean, I was about to sign paperwork to open the store. And the next to the last time was actually a year and a half, 2 years before I did. And it was because we found out as we were in negotiations that the area where this store was not zoned for commercial use.
Interesting.
And it had been a store for as long as we lived in the area, but it was zoned residential. And that, even though that place was known to operate as a commercial concern, it was actually a hair salon at the time.
Hmm.
But even though it was known to operate in that respect, the fact that it was zoned commercial, if somebody decided that they didn't want a witch store in that spot, it would be a very easy leverage for them to get us out.
Oh, wow.
And so we didn't want to take that chance. And so everything just broke down. No, 2 other times I had partners that were going in with me and we were all set. And right away, as soon as we were moving forward, the partner had something come up where they had to leave the state
Oh.
and go live with a mother who was suddenly ill, or go, take care of a property that they had that was in distress. There was something pressing and suddenly I had no partner. So I gave up and I said, I'm not going to do this. This is just, I'm tired of wanting this. I'm tired of getting so far into it and just falling through. And I got the call that, no, it's time to do a shop. And I fought it and I fought it. And I said, it doesn't do anything for me. It just causes me distress. I'm just not going to do it, because we have these free will to say no.
Yeah.
You can get called as a healer your whole life and just keep saying, I'm not going to do that because I don't like to touch people. Or I'm not going to do that because I don't like being around people. I don't like my energy mixing with people. I got called, I did it, and that is where the abundance came from.
Mm-hmm.
Is that I stopped fighting it and let it happen. And I'm not saying it's that way for everybody, but a lot of times if you are stuck, part of the healing you have to do is to stop fighting where you're being obviously led, and stop going down places you're being told not to go down.
Right.
So just listening and tuning in to what's happening with you. And I'm not, going to pretend that that'll happen for everybody, but boy, is it a good tool to use if you're trying to shift something in your life.
I mean, I think it is applicable to everybody in just dynamic ways. I mean, it is literally like, let's say somebody's dealing with dieting or something like that. If you are making choices that are against the goal that you have, just because you cannot see the end result, or you cannot understand what it will do for you to experience a change, then you'll keep going down that same rabbit hole. You'll find something, it'll be interesting, and then it won't be. And but if ultimately it's part of your path to be in a place of balance and wholeness, and I'm like sort of applying this to myself as I keep getting, go vegan, and I'm like, nope. How long can I outrun this horse? Because I'm not gonna do it. And just seeing where the road takes you or me or what have you. Once you finally start falling into that place of acceptance and you start leaning into the things that are challenging, the things that there is resistance to, more support comes. How long do you have an idea of like how many years that was that
I thought it, or yeah. That, oh gosh, probably 10.
Okay, I just wanted to throw that out there.
At least 10 years.
You and I both experience people that expect to shift everything to include that resistance in like 30 days. And it's like, you have lived with that probably for at least 80% of your life.
Yeah.
Up to that point.
And I love what you brought up about dieting, because in dieting, you don't have a relationship with your 120 pound self. You have a relationship with the food that you're eating. Yep. You have a relationship with the fat that you're carrying. You have a relationship with your colonitis, whatever is going on. You have a relationship with that. You don't have a relationship with the health.
Right.
And, you have a relationship with your knees that are hurting and your shortness of breath. So to shift that dynamic to having relationship with health is really tough. And I think why a lot of people don't succeed is because it's really hard to conceive of that. It's hard to imagine what that's like, especially if it's been a long time. And, I'll be going up a set of stairs and I'll watch somebody just, fly up the stairs, not holding on to rails or something. I'm like, what kind of witchcraft is this? Look at you go. And I've got the
Listen, we have
manure.
the same visual. I mean, I get to that fourth
Yes,
step and I'm like, this shouldn't be happening.
right. Well, and I've got the menieres too, which makes me have vertigo when I go up and down stairs or inclines. And so I'm holding on to the rail for balance. And I just see people like, you ain't hanging on or nothing. How do you do that? You just zooming up the steps. And yeah, I moved into a house that the only stairs are off the back deck. There's not a stair in this house, man. The front entrance is flat. You just go right in the door. And so, I mean, I don't even step into my shower. My shower is flush with the floor because I'm going to fall on my ass. So, yeah, I've got a relationship with the floor or the ground in that case. Broken legs and shit.
I love that we're using and that you have brought to this conversation the word relationship, because it really encapsulates like the intimacy, the deep ties with these various concepts. People may think I have a relationship with healing, but if you are on a constant journey of healing, you have a relationship with lack. If
Yeah.
you are in a constant journey with protection, you may have a relationship with multiple things, a lack of trust, a lack of confidence, so on and so forth. So the conversation is so much bigger than just I need this or I need that in terms of healing or protection. The first question should be, what do you have a relationship with right now? And what do you want to have a relationship going forward? And sometimes it's people. Like, even when we're not talking about love, it is, I've seen in the spiritual development community that when that first door opens and you want to tell everybody what you're going through and bring them with you on the journey, and then many will stop because people will start with the you're crazy and be careful and so on and so forth. And it's like, you start to have a relationship with the people that are involved in your process. I've also seen that in the health realm too, where you might start to love going to the gym because you like seeing certain people there or interacting with certain personalities that make you feel good. But when they're not there, you're not going. And that's because you don't have a relationship with health or the gym. You have a relationship with the people. And I think that once taking that word out of the realm of like love or things like that really allows us to know how insidious this can be.
Oh, absolutely. I'm going to flip this too, because
Yeah.
I had an appointment with my healthcare provider yesterday, who's wonderful. It's somebody I've seen for, probably 12 years, no, 13 years now. And they get me. They're really good about I don't have an aggressive perspective I'm very conservative regarding healthcare. I like to kind of let things take their course. I like to, I'm minimal intervention, let's put it like that. But I'm also very healthy. And so I went in to see her, and she said, well, do you want to see a specialist or anything? And I said, about what? I thought maybe she saw something I didn't. She says, oh, just anything. You're getting older. Did you want to? I can give you a referral to a cardiologist. I'm like, why would you send me to a cardiologist? Did you? What happened just now? And she said, oh, just because you're older, maybe we want to check that out, or anything that I'm like, you're my pulmonologist, no, I'm fine. And then she's just frantically kind of going through what few medications I take. And she says, well, you stopped taking your blood pressure medication. I said, yeah. And she goes, but your blood pressure is normal. Yeah. I've been off of it for 2 months and it's normal. And she's just looking for anything. And I realized she has, and most of the medical field has a relationship with illness. They don't have a relationship with health. And sometimes we do that as healers. I have a relationship with psychic attacks and shitty entities and things like that. So I would, if somebody came to me and this does happen occasionally, and they want a cleansing, and they're completely asymptomatic, and I do the egg on them, and the egg just sits there in the jar, I'm wondering what I missed. My immediate assessment isn't, wow, they must be really spiritually healthy. They must practice great spiritual hygiene. I'm thinking, well, I must not be on my game. I must have really missed something. And that right there shows, again, flipping the table a little bit, that as healers, we often have a relationship with what isn't working or shouldn't be working versus what is working. And I think it's really important that all of us, not just me and Dahlia, but everybody, attach themselves to the ideal rather than even what's going on right now. That doesn't mean don't balance your checkbook or
your chakras.
or your chakras. But it does mean that we need to kind of get a feel what that might be like. Now, one of the things that makes me think of, especially your example of the people around you, is what Eric was saying about if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room.
Yeah.
Likewise, if you want to be, and I see this happening with people and I make fun of them all the time. If you want to be wealthy, hang out with wealthy people. Pay attention to what they're doing. Pay attention to their mindsets. And I think this is sometimes where that negative impression comes from, is if you go hang out with wealthy people, sometimes they come off as just assholes. Just like if you hang out with people who are at a lower income level, sometimes they come off as just redneck or, trashy or whatever because of how they speak and how they've adapted to their circumstances. What has become normal for them might not be normal for you. And so I think but if you're with them for a long period of time, you will start to adapt to that as being normal. And whether it's the rich people or the other end of the spectrum, it's like when you have a cat that doesn't use the litter box and you can smell it all through your house. When you live in the house, you don't smell it as well. But boy, when you walk in, your eyes start to water. So it's about being in the room you want to be in. And it's about being around the people that are living the way that feels right to you.
Yeah.
And that might not be super affluent, it might not be super poor, or it might be one or the other. But you've got to find the place where you feel your best and make a relationship with those people and that set of circumstances. And through homeostasis, your energy and the energy around you will adjust to where that is. And you cannot expect anybody in your family or in your friend set to understand why you feel comfortable there. We see this with our kids all the time. Like, how can you listen to that music? It's terrible.
How can you be friends with those people? They treat you awful.
Right. And so we can't understand how that's feeling because it's not our experience to have.
Right.
It is our responsibility to keep our kids safe.
Absolutely.
But it's not our responsibility to share the experience or understand the experience that they're having. It's the same thing for our friends, for our moms, for our dads, any of it.
This is bringing me back to this. One of the other concepts I guess I have a relationship with is this sense of like the most genuine people don't have a lot. And so not wanting to move away from them when considering, my own value or my own sense of worth. And yet they may not have the same relationship with me. And so I, like in the beginning parts of my journey, I was definitely like, I don't want to be inaccessible and things like that. And I still have that mindset. But what that led to was being battered and taken advantage of by people who really didn't care. Instead of saying, well, where do I want to be? What community spaces do I want to be in, etc. it was like, oh, they're just working with what they no, they may just in fact be jerks. And and
Yeah.
and it is what it is. And so what you have said is a great, this is how you be present to what it is that you're connected to at any given time. Is this the room that you want to be in? And recognizing you can change at any time. No solution or no choice is so permanent that you can't say, okay, well, I tried that room out and I didn't enjoy it as much as I thought I would. I think some things take time for you to evaluate. So nobody's gonna, your first impression always has an opportunity to go deeper. I remember feeling like this aversion, like you were saying, to like the wealthy. And then I purposely signed myself up for a course called something, it was about marketing and connecting with people of affluence. And I was disgusted signing up. And then I get in there and I was like, oh, wait, they're people too. It was a really weird experience. And there were only a few like sort of what do I want to say, confirmations of what I thought, but there was so much less of my confirmation bias present, because it turned into, well, what's the motivation? There are actually people who are altruistic and philanthropic in those communities. And if that's your bend, then that's where you want to be, not just like, like Katrina was saying earlier, that money might create a sense of loss in your humanity, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Another thing, this is real touchy subject. This is bad, because I know a lot of people, especially a lot of people in this room, so to speak, really tie into this identity. And remember, like Dahlia was saying, those rooms that we're talking about, the door's not locked. You can come and go as you please. Try out other rooms. But one of the most insidious things a person can do is to develop a relationship with giving and providing to the place that they identify as, I take care of other people. I give, I provide. That's what I do. I am of service. If I have it and you need it, it's going to be yours. And we all love those people. Oh boy, do we want to be in that room? Do we ever love that? Everybody loves those people. And that's the trick. Everybody loves those people. And there is a part of us, of the people, that identify as being givers and providers, who know that they're going to be essential to some people, who know people are going to value what they do. And that becomes the currency. And that is a tricky place to be, because there are times that people who work in this fashion, as altruistic and wonderful as it is, number one, do not always develop personally or more deeply, because they can rely on the things they do for other people and the things they can give to other people as their currency rather than who they are. And a lot of times they believe on some level that they are not valuable, that what is valuable is what they can do for people, what they can give to people. And there really has to be a balance in all of this.
Yeah.
And that's a tough conversation to have with people, because boy, everybody loves a giver. Everybody loves that person that you can just connect with and know, if you say, I need blah, 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 they're going to find a way to get it for you.
Yep.
If you need them at 3 o'clock in the morning, they're going to answer the bing on the phone, no matter how tired they are. And we over rely on that stuff. But yeah, that's a tough place. That's a tough place to be.
You hit a nail there. I mean, I've seen that. I've been that. definitely in my earlier years where there was this sense of importance. I mean, that's a core wound for me.
A tough one for me too.
Yeah. So, but to the topic at hand, when you start to realize where your relationship is, if it's not feeling like you're good enough, then you start to heal that, and it completely shifts everything. And then you start to have a sense of value, and then you say, okay, well, like I remember one of the things that shifted for me internally was that relationship with not feeling good enough or like I was doing enough. I also had to shift the way I thought about what other people were doing. So, like, instead of, and I try to encourage this mindset in other people, it's never, well, if you care about me or if you love me, you will do this. It's okay, this is where you're capable and this is where you're not. And if you surprise me, great. And if you surprise me consistently, then okay, now we have new capability. But accepting what's there is going to carry you a lot further. I even did this with like I wouldn't, like, let's say Katrina, your services were like $500 a reading. I stopped saying like, well, that's too expensive, because that's not true. It's that either there's a handful of reasons. It could be not wanting to pay for it, not being able to afford it, having a relationship with lack, whatever. And so when I started to both internalize and externalize that process, it was like, oh, it's just maybe something that I don't want to pay, or they feel like they need to charge that, and that's important. And I think that's missing in a lot of healing practices. Is yes, there's that internal piece, but there has to be that external piece too. It's not that that person doesn't love you, that's the way that they show love. Like I remember I was dating this guy, and he I was about to say his sign, but we always do that, it doesn't matter. But his way of showing love was to put me, like, tell me, well, you're wearing baggy clothes, but you have a nicer body than that, so I'm gonna get you these clothes. And like, it at first I was like, oh, how sweet. And then I was like, wait a minute, like, why are you trying to change me? And long story short, at the end of that relationship that did not last, it boiled down to that is how he showed love. It was, and we had a conversation about it. It was that he saw my potential, which, okay, that's fine. And he wanted to encourage that and encourage me to reach for that, but he never asked if I wanted that. He had projected that things could be better onto me without asking, what I wanted, or, to my point, where was my capability, like where was my comfort in making the changes that he was talking about, and did it actually make my life better? No, the clothes did not. And so uh I say all of that to say, like, it ended in like oh, I realized, and I'm sorry I tried to change you and all of that. But rather than looking at him as somebody who was manipulative or didn't accept me for me or whatever. It was like, oh, this is just how he shows love. And I can accept that and release this situation. It was no longer this, well, I wasn't good enough and I didn't look a certain way and so on and so forth. And I just like that piece of where is your relationship? What are you looking at? What are you dealing with? Are you healing? Are you protecting? Is being present to those things is paramount. And I think, just to say this, protection is appropriate if you don't have the capacity to do the healing work right then, or you're just knee deep in it and you need something to cover you. But I think that we should all be striving towards just healing rather than working from a place of lack at some point.
Another point to make in the the balance between protection and healing is that when you are protecting yourself or your child or whatever, the emphasis is on what are other people doing.
Yep.
When you're healing, the emphasis is on what are you doing.
Yep.
And so there's times now, if somebody's trying to break down your door and harm you, yes, protection needs to come before healing.
Yep.
And that's the same thing psychically. If you're under attack, yes, we need to get protective measures up first. Then we can work on healing the damage. So yeah, we're going to close the shutters and put up the fences first. But we also need to put the other side up of the healing part of the equation. One of the things very quickly that comes to mind is that we have expectations, and those are often where healing goes to die, unfortunately. In the case of your ex, he was bringing you clothing to maximize your potential of what he expected you should look like and what he expected society thought they wanted you to look like.
Mm-hmm.
So there was an expectation there that ended up being the downfall of the relationship. And it wasn't about you being good enough or not. It was about him wanting you to present in a particular way to meet an expectation that he had. And a lot of times that fear of other people's expectations is what drives us. And a quick example of that with my kids is I realized when my kids got to be 12, 13 years old or so, how much I was absolutely invested in my kids all the time in terms of, are they okay? What do they need? What can I give to them? I want to give them everything I can, everything that they need, because I didn't have that with my family. And it got to where I remember one time they wanted to, now we were living in Grizzly Flats, and so we were trapped on a mountain. If they left, I had to take them. They literally couldn't walk to the mall. They couldn't walk to a store, a bowling alley. If they went anywhere, I had to take them. And so they wanted to go somewhere, I don't remember where, and came in, oh, can we go down to so-and-so and such and such? Well, it was going to take maybe 2-3 hours of my time. I think it was Walmart or somewhere they wanted to go to. And I just said, no, I'm tired. I don't want to drive up and down the mountain right now. I'm just tired. They were just flummoxed, like, what? And I started doing that more of, no, I don't want to do that. I can do that for you Friday, or let's look at what happens Saturday, but I'm not going to do that today. And again, expectations, and we set up those expectations with people. We create through what we allow people to have expectations of us. So I know that we're about to check out here for the week, but yeah, be careful of the expectations you entertain, as well as the expectations that you have for people, and be really careful of what expectations you allow people to set up in regard to you, because that dynamic is dangerous. And it's an extreme thing, but the first time somebody hits you, if you don't take measures on that relationship, they are going to know on some level it's okay to hit you.
Yep.
And so that's just an extreme example. But the first time somebody, knocks on your door without calling first, and you welcome them in and give them dinner, they're going to know that's okay. So boundaries, people. Boundaries.
The reoccurring teacher.
Woo! Boundaries.
I had such terrible boundaries in the beginning of doing all of this. Oh my gosh. And I'm still paying for it. So yes, boundaries.
Because I didn't value myself enough to say that's not okay, because I was afraid if I said that's not okay, I would lose some amount of love, or I would lose the relationship if I just said no. I'm not going to do that, or that's not okay with me.
This show has been awesome. I think I want to go back and write down some of the things that you said and make t-shirts out of it, especially expectation is where healing goes to die. Like, I think that needs to be on a t-shirt for sure. are tattooed somewhere. You know, we'll make like a, what do you call those? Like a temporary tattoo of that somewhere. But this has been, there's so many conversations within this conversation, and bringing to light our relationship with healing, our relationship to protection, and how that can permeate your path, your spiritual path, in terms of, you know, saying that you're constantly healing something when really you haven't worked out the lack piece of it. And so then you just continue to operate in protection and so on and so forth. This is one of those shows that you're definitely going to want to go back and rewatch a couple of times. But in the meantime, we're going to give you the week to do that because we have arrived at the end of the show. Keep those comments coming. Keep questions coming, because there's a lot to be asked about or fleshed out from within this. And we will keep showing up for you guys. We will be back next week, as far as I know, in terms of my life. And it's just been such a joy to be back. It's great to talk to you again, Katrina, on the show. Off the show, we continue to speak, but being here on this platform with you is always amazing. It's the highlight of my week. So glad to be back. And we will catch you guys next time on Crossroads of Cognition.